focusing on the maintenance and reliability best practices sponsored by the Society of Maintenance and Reliability Professionals as our reference to help guide us along this discussion. So that's a little bit about me. Purdue University graduate, master's in industrial management. In the past, I've worked as maintenance manager at U.S. Steel, as well as industrial engineering manager for Chrysler, building Jeep Cherokees. So again, Jarlin Liner, Rock Automation, and I just want to get an idea of you guys and your roles within your organizations. So Chris, we'll start with you.
And you can use your chat function, and then I will announce that for the presenter.
Oh, okay. I thought they could speak, but if not, I can just keep going, Aaron.
Yeah, it's kind of one-sided, but they can chat and I can let you know.
Okay, all right. So I'll keep going. I'll keep going. I just want to make sure, team, that I'm addressing your specific function and your specific needs, given that we do have a small number of folks on the phone with us. Okay. All right. So let me start with this presentation, team, that I have worked with the Kirby Risk team to develop, and see if I can hide this. Okay. So today we'll be overviewing 7 very key maintenance and reliability best practices. One being OEE, you've heard that term, overall equipment effectiveness. We'll address stocked MRO as a percent of replacement asset value. You can only know this metric if you understand the value of your assets, and we'll show you how our integrated service agreements help achieve that. Mean time to restore, mean time between failure. Some things that we take for granted include stock inventory turns, inactive stock, as well as storeroom transactions. So let me just back out of here just to show my reference for all of these best practices come from the SMRP Best Practices 5th edition. And this shows a list of a host of maybe about 100 different KPIs that folks in your capacities are tasked with managing and monitoring on a daily basis. So the business drivers that impact these KPIs include reducing your total MRO cost, reducing inventory levels, decreasing mean time to repair, improving inventory integrity, increasing mean time between failure, and improved financial stability. All these are typical business drivers that we tend to see within the industry. And some of these functions, plant operations, maintenance, finance, purchasing, storeroom, and engineering, they are what we typically see as the men and women tasked with these particular business drivers. So Chris, Sean, whether you're in any of these functions, you are the right audience for this presentation because we want to show you how we can help impact your business. One way is to look at the supply chain as well as the demand chain. So on the supply chain side, that's very transactional focused. That's reactive. We can't avoid that. In the manufacturing industry, we understand that things tend to break, things tend to change, and you have to react to that on a transactional basis. But one thing that we can impact includes the demand chain. On the demand chain side, we can see that as the more proactive side of this business. Proactive as in, hey, we can predict when things are going to break based on certain metrics. Proactive as in, hey, it triggers that demand. So within the Rockwell automation business model, we call that midsection the value chain. The value chain would be that midpoint between the supply chain and the demand chain. And when those come together, you can more clearly address some of those key metrics that you're looking to address and not just have a 100% reactive business model. Within that demand chain, we're looking to improve the mean time between failure as well as the uptime for your plant and your machines. With having so many clients in the area, we've tabulated a lot of data together to be able to show that if you participate in activities such as remanufacturing versus repair, as one example, the demand chain tends to go down. So in this example, we're able to show part A, part B, part C based on color, right? So the red part here, part A, year one, we see high demand. But if we look at remanufacturing to a like new condition versus repairing just a failed component, the demand for that part will go down. And we have customer data that proves this. So this is the business model that we're looking to partner with you all to say, hey, we want to decrease the need to repair and remanufacture those parts by putting them to a like new condition up front, knowing what those parts are, and partnering with us to be able to troubleshoot remotely or have field service engineers be able to come on site to help troubleshoot on site. And the key reliability measure that we have noticed, this is a cool trend. The running mean time between failure tends to go up when you implement some of these key reliability metrics and you become best in class. So our best in class clients, they see year over year, their running mean time between failure increases. And as a result, that failure rate is going to decrease. When you're able to rebuild those machines to a like new condition, you don't see as many failures. So let me pause for a second. Well, actually, let me just keep going. So the first metric, as we mentioned, mean time between failure, mean time to repair. So my format is this. I'll show the definition and the objective of the metric, and then I'll be able to show you what some of the best in class numbers are and how we can help you achieve best in class at the end of this presentation. So mean time between failure. This metric is the average length of operating time between failures for an asset or component. So when you get that component repaired, how long does it usually take for it to fail again? That's essentially what mean time between failure is suggesting. The objective there is to use this to assess the reliability of that repairable asset or component. As you all know, that reliability will increase if it's in a like new condition versus just simply repairing the part that went bad. When the OEM is the remanufacturer of that part, they can understand the life cycle of all the individual components and be able to address those when they're in-house. Because the less we see that part in-house, the better it is for the partnership, and really the better it is for your uptime and your metric of mean time between failure. So the formula being operating time in hours divided by the number of failures. So if you're not currently using this metric to judge your operation, I'm suggesting that some of our best-in-class clients use this as one of their key metrics. Overall equipment effectiveness. This is a metric used to measure equipment or asset performance based on actual availability, performance, efficiency, and quality of the product. The objective there is to categorize major losses or reasons for poor asset performance. So within the OEE formula, we see it is a combination of, as a percentage, availability as a percentage, performance efficiency as a percentage, and quality rate. Best in class based on different business units and different type of manufacturing operations. We see batch type operations, OEE, best in class is 85 to 100%. Discrete continuous operations, we see that as 90 to 100% best in class. And then continuous processes, that's the highest, as you can imagine, 95 to 100% OEE. So I want to just point out some of these facts based on the best practices guide to say, hey, based on your operation team, where do you fit in this best in class value? And if you're less than 85% in a batch operation or less than 90% in a batch operation, the question is why? Which of these metrics, whether it be availability, performance efficiency, or quality, is helping drive your number in the wrong direction? So as an example, availability, if that availability is because you have bad mean time between failure, we can help address that, and I'll show you how that can be done in the past, later in the presentation. Okay, so as a build up to the OEE effectiveness timeline, I'll show you the quality, speed, and availability, and these are all based on 365 days, 24-hour availability. And we know that things tend to go down as some of these availability metrics, speed metrics, quality metrics go down as well. But the lead up to this should be an ideal chart that looks like this, where you're on that demand chain side and you're impacting availability and not just reacting to availability, as well as speed and quality. So I just want to show within the Rockwell Automation, the Allen Bradley Remanufacturing Services, we do impact OEE in such that our remanufacturing is a process performed by us as the OEM to a like new condition, not just repairing the components that are suspected to be bad or marginal. Okay, so we provide quality repair and that the quality remanufacturing that repair vendors just can't match because they don't have the firmware, software, they don't own the rights to those things. So within our 7-step remanufacturing process, first step, receipt and verification of the part. That is when we check for warranty. We want to make sure when's the last time we received this part in-house. And if it was in the last 12 months, that part is under warranty. That's the first step. We need to understand that. Revision and enhancements, being the owner of the firmware and the software, we'll make sure that we flash that firmware and make sure that it's the latest and greatest version. And that helps from so many things such as security, to the functionality of the equipment. So you have all those enhancements as a result of using the original equipment manufacturer to do the remanufacturing. Component verification and replacement. That's when we look to see, okay, what's wrong with this part? Let's verify the mean time between failure for all the components. And then in that step is where we look to purchase or get the subcomponents to be able to make your component like new, your overall unit like new. Here's one key differentiating factor that we use in our remanufacturing. We do that functional and load testing and the environmental simulation. So we put it under load to make sure that it powers up and we understand that everything's within the correct parameters. And then environmental simulations such as high temperature, shock and vibration, humidity testing, very key features when it comes to remanufacturing. So you understand that that component will meet environmental needs when you get it back in-house. And then final inspection, that's when we look to make sure it is truly like new according to the prints of the original equipment. And then secure shipping, something that's taken for granted, but we don't take that piece for granted. Accessories such as keys, batteries, manuals, shipped in the correct anti-static bags and containers. That way, when you get those back and they're on your shelf, they're in those anti-static bags and nothing's being impacted during shipping and during storage for the next use. All right, so within the Rockwell Automation and Kirby Risk Partnership, our repair management KPIs are, but not limited to, the mean time to repair, mean time between failure. These are all KPIs that I would encourage you to investigate if your business is not using some of these, if not all of these, to manage your plant. Look into these, turnaround time, productivity, reliability. These are all the KPIs that we use to help make sure that our partnership is a win-win and not just receiving more failed units. And that's not how we want our business model to work. We want it to work such that we're meeting your KPIs as our clients. Okay, so this is actual data. Rockwell Automation, we have asset management professionals that are embedded in a host of clients in the Indiana market, and we have running tabulation of the parts that we receive back into our remanufacturing as well as third-party repair hubs. And we have data that shows part after part after part where we don't see that same number of parts once we remanufacture them. So this is just 2011, 12, all the way up to 18. And I'm just showing different part numbers in different colors here to show that we actually don't see those same serial numbers over and over. And that is when we can impact your OEE because you're up and running because we're not repairing some of your parts. We also do third-party electrical repair in our Munster, Indiana repair facility. And we have customers that take tours of that facility often just so we can show our capabilities, and which are non-Allen Bradley there. And lately for COVID, we've been doing virtual tours. So if you have non-Allen Bradley components, we can show you our capabilities there as well. All right, so moving on to the next KPI, stock MRO as a percentage of the asset value, the repairable asset, replacement asset value. So the definition of this particular metric, the amount of money spent annually maintaining your assets divided by the replacement asset value. Why is this important? One, you have to know how much money you're spending in order to manage your business, manage your storeroom specifically, but you also have to know that replacement asset value within, and the objective there is to allow that comparison of the expenditures for maintenance with other plants of varying size and value. So here's the formula. You understand that if you understand your total maintenance cost times 100 as a percentage divided by the replacement asset value. We've seen this, and this is not a Rock Automation reference. It comes from the references here below, some of the key figures in the maintenance reliability world. Best in class, generally less than 3%. Top quartile would be somewhere between 0.7 to 3.6%, varying by industry. So what we mean by that is, one, you have to understand the value of those assets. And I'll show you later within our integrated service agreement, we have a feature called the install base evaluation, where we can actually tell you what the list price value is of all of the parts in your storeroom, as well as all the parts in your electrical cabinets. So when you really understand that replacement asset value, that RAV, you can understand how you can impact this particular metric. So Aaron, let's go ahead and ask question number 1 in the chat, and then we'll come back to that. So the question would be, do you have an accurate plant model that identifies all of your physical assets? So let me pause there and see if we have yay or nay in the chat when it comes to that question. Question number 1. Do you have an accurate plant model that identifies all of your physical assets? And this question is very relevant as it relates to hitting these key metrics. If you don't know what's there, you really can't hit these key KPIs and become best in class. So we have a more yeses or nos on that one.
It looks like Sean said we certainly have gaps, but have a fair idea of our install base.
Okay. Okay, so having said that, one way that we have best runtime and good practices on addressing those gaps, we use a hierarchy, and this is a suggestion based on best practices, but we're open to specific suggestions based on your CMMS and how you label your assets. But one suggestion that we have would be top level, the overall plant hierarchy. And then, so plant A, then you would have the area, the location within that area. So in this example, it would be line 2 of the packaging area. And then within line 2, you have the machine, wrapper number 2D. And then you go down to the asset level, and then the specific part number of that asset. So within this, and then you open up every electrical cabinet, you'll be able to see that specific asset in that machine, in that location, in that area, in that specific plant. So the one way that we suggest you go about understanding what those assets are is having the install base evaluation. All right, let me get you to ask that second question. Do you have an updated complete bill of materials for your critical assets? So let's go ahead and address that second question. And if not, our definition of the install base evaluation is the deliverable service that provides actionable intelligence to help you make data-driven decisions regarding the support and obsolescence of your install base. So when I say data-driven decisions, I mean, we're actually going cabinet by cabinet, collecting data. We're in your storeroom collecting data to be able to compare what's in the assets in the machines versus what's in the storeroom. And then we provide that actionable report to be able to show the life cycle, as an example, of all of those machines. And that life cycle continuum will look like this. We'll be able to determine how many assets are active, mature, end of life, or discontinued. By definition, active, most current product offering within that category. Active mature would be fully supported, but there is a newer product family that exists. End of life, there is a discontinuation date, and there's limited support capabilities for that product. And then discontinued as in the new product, that product is no longer manufactured. So understanding your current install base life cycle is very key to hitting some of these KPIs and these best-in-class metrics. So Aaron, what was the answer to question number 2 for the team?
We had missing a lot of details on some equipment, end of life and continued equipment is a big concern right now for replacement cost perspectives.
Okay. So we would definitely like to speak with you more because we have some services and suggestions to help address this. And this particular global product life cycle, this is real, it's common. You know, products don't last forever. The PLC5 was good in its day, but we couldn't expect for it to last forever because it didn't address all of your automation and concerns, right? So we have a programmable automation controller, not just a programmable logic controller like we used to have with the 2s and the 5s. So this is a typical life cycle stage, and we would like to see your plant's life cycle be more active or active mature and less discontinued. All right, and I'll get to question 3 here in a second, but I want to jump into stores inventory turns and inactive stock. So within the integrated service agreement, we want to address your inactive stock and be able to decrease that. So what's the definition there? Inactive stock, by definition, that's the metric of the number, it's a ratio of the number of inactive maintenance, repair, and operating inventory stock records to the total number of MRO inventory stock records. So essentially there, we want to know how many parts are on the shelf based on the parts that you need to have on the shelf, right? And inactive, there could be excess inactive or just inactive, period. The objective there is to keep that to a minimum. And if you're best in class, that's less than 1%. So we want to help you become best in class by not having any parts in your storeroom that you don't have in corresponding machines in your hierarchy. So we understand that OEMs come in and you have projects, capital projects to upgrade your machines. And sometimes things slip through the cracks such that the parts that were on the shelf for the old machines never get purged from your shelf. So we can help you reduce that inactive stock, that MRO inventory, by having that install base evaluation and understanding what's there. This next slide, I want to show you some things that we've seen typical when we conduct our install base evaluations over many clients. We see it's not uncommon for folks to have 28, 30% inactive stock. And that's not good for the business because you're paying taxes on that shelf space, and that shelf space that you could be using for other purposes. So we have mechanisms in place to help take this active piece and grow it. And now there's dollars associated with inactive stock. Now, in this example, the total list price was about $130,000 for all of those inactive parts. So now there's money to be saved by getting rid of all that inactive stock. So these are some very real pictures that I'm showing here that we can present as a result of understanding where you want to be from a best-in-class perspective with inactive stock. Now, I don't want to move on without highlighting excess active. Active stock is a good thing, but we want to make sure, based on mean time between failure, mean time to repair, and other metrics, that you have the correct quantity and not too many parts on your shelf as well. And we don't find it atypical for folks to have about 20% excess active stock. Now, I understand that there's some individual judgment calls that go along with that, right? Because you have to know your business and know that sometimes in the summer, drives tend to fail more often. So I wouldn't say that 5% excess active stock is a bad thing to have for certain components that you see common failure modes with. But that's a decision that we can help you make on a individual basis. But 20% excess active stock is definitely not good for the business. All right, so storeroom transactions. This is a very key metric as well. Definition. It's the ratio of the total number of storeroom transactions to the total number of storeroom clerks. The objective here is to make sure that the workload is balanced. And when that workload is unbalanced, you'll tend to see that things are not getting transacted quickly enough. And now your OEE is impacted because you don't have the parts on order that you need to get a machine restored to its full capacity, things of that nature. So the formula here, total number of transactions divided by the number of clerks. And best in class, we see that most companies can do about 100 to 140 transactions per day per attendee. So, and that's a reference here from the RM group. One thing that we can do to help you address that number of storeroom transactions, we have what we call the parts management agreement. We assure ready access to critical spares by having Rockwell owned inventory on site or at your location. So one thing I want to emphasize here, storeroom transactions. As an example, when something breaks, the storeroom clerk traditionally has to enter a repair order to get it repaired or manufactured, as well as submit that purchase order to purchasing. So now you have an additional transaction in your procurement department to be able to provide Kirby risk with the purchase order to get that part remanufactured. We have services such that there won't be any additional purchase orders with our annual remanufacturing agreement because there's what we call a bucket of money. If we work together to see your usage rates on the average, $100,000 as an example, repair and remand over the last year, 2-3 years, we can have the parts management agreement and subsequent annual repair agreement such that you draw down from that bucket of money. So that PO only comes with the $100,000 usage, and then no additional POs every time you have to get a part replenished off the parts management agreement via the ARA. So these are ways that we work together with a lot of clients to reduce the number of transactions and the time that you have to enter those transactions to get parts replenished. The other advantage with the parts management agreement is that you have a 1-year in-service warranty. With Rock Automation owning those parts on your shelf, the warranty clock does not begin to tick until those parts are removed from the shelf by your clerks and storeroom attendants and coordinators. So there's many advantages to it. The overall advantages for the purposes of this discussion is that now you're reducing the number of storeroom transactions that your team has to manage because you're reducing the number of purchase orders and the number of parts that are on the shelf. So the value here is that now we're having to address 100% active inventory and less of that inactive or excess active inventory. So that's the major advantage to that. And just want to show you the holistic approach and how the other metric that we just mentioned as far as storeroom transactions, the active inventory, the replacement asset value, they all come together with some of these partnerships and programs that we have from an integrated service perspective. So let me ask the next question, Aaron, question number 3. Can you put that one up for the team? So we understand that things happen. There's often times where you have things that break. I want to get an idea. The last time you had an unplanned outage, how long was your plant down, or how long was that machine down because of that unplanned outage? And Give me a number and then an idea of what the cause of that unplanned outage was. What numbers are we looking at, Aaron?
We're getting 6 hours specific custom part failure.
Okay. So one way that we can address minimum downtime with our integrated service agreements, having the correct parts on the shelf to be able to say, hey, we have conducted the install base evaluation up front. We know what parts should be on the shelf. And then we have agreements such that those parts are there. And then we perform quarterly audits to make sure they're there. And when you go down, unfortunately, that mean time to restore can be that much quicker with the combination of the integrated service agreement, knowing what parts should be there, putting those correct parts there. And then I'm going to use this slide to show our global reach as it relates to our support centers. We implement what we call a follow the sun model. 24/7, we can be able to answer the phone and support your engineers. We have tools such as Vuforia Chalk, where we can interact with you live to be able to see the machine and make suggestions real time. So the troubleshooting is increased, the troubleshooting time is decreased, and the quality of the troubleshooting is increased when you're utilizing our support centers to be able to help you. And then we also have remanufacturing centers. So whether we manufacture drives, the PACs and the PLCs that we remanufacture, we have a host of locations that support our different regions. Here in the US, the majority of our remanufacturing capabilities are in Milwaukee, where we manufacture the OEM manufacturer for the drives, sometimes in Cleveland, Cambridge, Ontario, Canada for certain components, Mexico for certain components. So depending on where these parts are manufactured, we traditionally send those back to that location for original equipment remanufacturing. So one service, when you need it the most, we have 500 plus remote support engineers, 600 plus field service engineers. I don't want to overlook that piece. When you're troubleshooting with us from an integrated service agreement perspective, if you and the remote support engineer agree that, yeah, we've done everything we could, we need a Rockwell Nation certified field service engineer on site, we can dispatch that person as well without any additional purchase orders. So that's another way that we can get your machines back up and running quicker with less transactions because it's all integrated into one agreement. They speak multiple languages, 13 plus years average experience. And when I say good experience, a lot of our field service engineers and remote support engineers have been field support engineers at one time in their career. And that really helps them help you remotely. All right, so last question, Aaron, can you put that last question into the chat as well? So from a next steps team, if any of these particular metrics are metrics that you would like to use to affect your business outcomes, whether it be reducing your MRO spend, reducing your inventory cost, reducing downtime costs, increasing throughput, these are particular business outcomes that we want to utilize our integrated service agreement to help address. So we'd like to speak with you or your team members to take it to the next step, the next level. And we've seen from a stairway to helping you maximize your efficiency perspective, we've seen about a 20% reduction in MRO spend as a result of our integrated service agreements on the average of all of our clients. 18% reduction in inventory cost, and not just because we, in some cases, own the parts and you don't, but understanding what parts should be on the shelf via that install base evaluation. That helps us keep that inventory cost down, keeping that spend down, because now with our remanufacturing services, you don't see the same parts breaking over and over, okay? Storeroom management, we can reduce that MRO spend by having the correct layout, making sure the correct parts are in the right place, and having a more efficient storeroom. And I don't want to overlook life cycle management. So let me get an answer, Aaron, to that last question.
Sure thing. We've got controllers and PLCs, yes, drives, yes, but not so much commodity parts.
Okay. So I like that answer. And let me address those commodity parts. We understand that not all of your critical assets are what Rockwell Automation and Kirby Risk would consider repairable or remanufacturable. There are certain parts that are critical to your operation that are not repairable. Those parts that we can replenish with new and still integrate into this agreement with no problem at all. So we call those consumable, and Kirby Risk has a very good mechanisms in place to help us integrate consumable parts into this integrated service agreement as well, such as fuses, right? We know that if fuses go bad, you can't repair those, remanufacture those, but we need to still have those on the shelf when needed. So our life cycle management agreements and our migration agreements have been shown to help reduce that downtime by about 24%, because the last thing you want to have a situation where a part breaks and you didn't realize that that part was discontinued. So we can take that more demand chain approach, that more proactive approach to help identify the life cycle of all your critical assets. Okay, so some of the other customer outcomes that we see very typical within the integrated service agreement: to be able to supplement your technical workforce by using our 24/7 remote support engineers and remote support sites, as we mentioned on our quote that we just showed you, and our field service engineers. They can do scheduled PMs. They can also do on-site training. So when you look at those business outcomes and things that you want to help become best in class, we can use our supplemental workforce to help get you there. We can help optimize your install base investment by a combination of everything we just said, including the annual repair agreement, remanufacturing agreement, and understanding the usage and analytics. The first thing we want to do when we get a part is understand when's the last time we saw this part. Only then can we help you optimize that install base, because we're minimizing the mean time between failure, or increasing the mean time between failure. Reducing the total cost of ownership via the parts management agreement, or whether contract management, whether field service engineers or those reports. And then last but not least, maximizing uptime. That is something that we want to accentuate in this partnership, being able to partner with you and Kirby Risk to maximize your machine uptime, because that's how we drive OEE and maximum efficiency. So last slide here, team. The Rockwell Automation and Kirby Risk Integrated Service Agreement comes in 3 different tiers. The basic tier would be the essential, where we have your Tech Connect, common word that we use for our remote support agreements. The annual remanufacturing agreement, where you determine your spend based on past usage. And then we have, those are the 2, and then the analytics and reports. So those are the 2 basic components of the essential level, and that's one integrated service agreement level that we can present. The enhanced level, covering all of your support services. So when we understand your total install base and that value, that repairable asset value, RAV, that we mentioned earlier, now we can have a remanufacturing agreement that encompasses all your entire plant. So there is no cap when it comes to your average usages. In this example, the minimum cap is $5,000 for small plants. We see that they spend at least $5,000 on remanufacturing, and we'll add a 20% cap to that to make sure that that you don't go down. So within the enhanced version, we understand the total install base, and then we have no limit to the number of units that can come through for this particular portion of the agreement. It includes 40 hours field service block of time, as well as the install base evaluation at that enhanced level. So the install base evaluation includes our My Equipment portal, where you can submit quotes and submit remanufacturing orders and repair orders online via that portal. And then last but not least, the Premier Integrated Service Agreement includes all the features that we just mentioned, but it also has a dedicated contract customer success manager to manage your contract for you. It includes the scheduled maintenance, and it could also include the parts management agreement or e-learning and training at any level. So last comment for me, and I'll take any questions. The Rockwell Automation Kirby Risk Integrated Service Agreement can help you become best in class for any of the metrics, if not all the metrics that we would suggest that are very common in the industry, including OEE, mean time to restore, mean time between failure, minimizing stores inventory, inactive stock, and minimizing the number of transactions that you have to implement to keep your business up and running. Okay, so that was it for me. Let's have some questions and dialogue here in the next 10 minutes. And that'll bring us to our full hour. Any comments or questions based on this content?
If you have questions, you can just put them into the chat function and I'll read them out loud. We have one comment. It says, I don't have any specific questions. I think I have a good understanding of what ISA can do for us. And that was from Sean.
Okay, good. Thank you, Sean. Okay. Michael, Tim, JJ.
Oh, we've got a few questions.
Okay.
I have somebody asking if the slide deck will be available, and we're working on seeing if that can be. And then I've got another question that says, what level of support do I receive for the essential level?
Good question. I'll go back to that. So that includes the Tech Connect contract on an annual basis. And again, these can be single year contracts, 3-year, 5-year contracts up to the max. So at the essential level, that'll include the 24/7 system support for Tech Connect. And I thank you for that question because I didn't emphasize that piece in the presentation. We all, in Tech Connect land, our remote support service, we have product support, and that's the basic level. When you call in, the engineers that pick up the phone, you go through the phone tree to determine if you need help with drives or industrial controls, and the engineers that answer the phone are experts in that particular product. Within the integrated service agreement, you get 24/7 system support. Those engineers answer the phone, have a good understanding of all products and the integration of systems. So they can be able to help you troubleshoot quicker with less need to transfer you and incorporate other engineers into that troubleshooting ticket. The central level also comes with the annual remanufacturing agreement. And I specify remanufacturing right now because the ISA can only incorporate Allen Bradley components. Now we can do an additional integrated repair agreement on top of this if you have third party that you'd like to include, but that says, hey, you choose your spend amount and we can help you based on our understanding of your past usage. So if you say, hey, I've spent $50,000 on the average in the last 3 years, we can set up a $50,000 annual remanufacturing agreement, and then we'll add 20%. So you'll have a $60,000 cap when it comes to that essential ISA. So, and then customer usage analytics, you have the ability to see the dashboards that tell you how many parts you've shipped out, how often you've used that report, the contract, what other contracts you have with Rockwell Automation. So to answer your question, the essential level would include these 3 check marks here. but we can add a 40-hour block of time for field service engineers to come on site at the essential level. So essential would include these first 3, maybe 4, if you choose the block of time options. And you can add the parts management agreement and e-learning discounts to any level of the ISA. Does that answer your question?
It doesn't look like we have any other questions at this time.
Good deal. Good deal. I thank you all so much for your time. Thanks for the interaction and dialogue. And feel free to, and Aaron, please feel free to share the version of the presentation that I sent there. Now, again, yeah, so you can share this presentation, and then team, feel free to reach out to your Kirby risk specialist, whether it be JJ, Michael, or Tim, and then we can continue our dialogue on a more granular level based on this information.
Yep, and just once again, thank you everybody for participating in our meeting today, and I hope everybody has a good rest of the week.
Thank you all.